Hello, my name is Mildred Fakoya. This is my final project for the Cloud Services Infrastructure and Computing class. In this project, I designed an infectious disease clinic tracker and record archive using Amazon Web Service technologies. And the technologies that I used are the EC2 instance, the Elastic IP, Amazon SNS, the S3 bucket, and Internet of Things. This is the instance for my project. I try to create an interface to demonstrate the effectiveness and the simplicity of embedded Amazon Web Service technologies in software development, especially for non-programmatic users, and also how it can be used to improve system functionality. Created a site hosted on the EC2 instance, um, attached an Elastic IP and a domain name. And then I used for the front end design HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, Ajax. And for the back end, I used PHP and Python. MariaDB for database. Okay, so what the project does is that it collects information from the users. It sends an SNS notification to the subscribers of the topic, publishes the information to a theme on IoT Core, which is to an S3 bucket for archive by the IoT. I also put this on the front end, the administration drop down menu, to create an S3 bucket, create an SNS topic, and to subscribe to an SNS topic. So for this, I will create the S3 bucket, create a new SNS topic, and subscribe to the topic. Then we'll fill a record and see how it goes. Okay, so now I have my S3 bucket and I have my IoT. I already created the theme in IoT Core, and we are going to be working with the theme tracker. For the SNS, but I'll be creating this topic from the interface and not from the console. First of all, I want to create an S3 bucket, and I'll click on save. When I go over to the S3, I should have that bucket created. So what we want to do is we want the IoT core to send the record entry to the S3 bucket. Create SNS topic. So I'll create a topic named site, and I'll create a topic named results. Next, I will subscribe to the topic here. Okay, so I should get an email now. Okay, and I will confirm subscription. So before that, let's go over to check if now I have two topics, result and site, and the subscriptions are okay. These are the two I just sent, to site and to results. So I'm going to confirm these two subscriptions. So let's okay, now that is confirmed. So finally, I'm going to start a record on the system. So once a record is entered into the system, both the site topic and the result topic, it gets a notification pushed. The difference is that the site will always get a notification, and the results will only get a notification if the result is positive. So I'm going to save this. Okay, now we get this coming in bucket. I should get my and this is the technical presentation. To review, I created a site and that holds the system From the site, you can create an S3 bucket. You can create an SNS topic. Subscribe to topics. I subscribe to the 2 topics, site and results. When a record is entered into the system, I get notifications for the record entered. Okay, now so let's see how the system was created. I will go to my EC2 instance. I want to SSH into this instance. So I use an Ubuntu server and installed the PHP, Python, the AWS PHP SDK and the AWS Python SDK. The documentation on the home page will give you a full description of what I did and how the project works. For me to be able to install the AWS PHP SDK, I had to install Composer, and once Composer is installed on the system, you get the composer.json and the composer.log and then the vendor file. If you try to replicate the system using the source code, you have to install Composer on your own system to work on your system. Now for the home page, controlled by the index file. And so this is what the index file looks like. So it just holds all the text you see on the index page. The classes.php file holds the database connection script. It requires a dbconfig.php file that holds the configuration settings for connection to the database. What I did here was use a PHP magic function to automatically connect to the database. Once a user goes to the site, and to create automatically the table for the record entry in the database. I also have some functions that helps in record processing. dbconfig file that holds the database configuration for the system. So that's the file that creates an S3 bucket, and this file is called store.php. Now the store.php file is controlled by the create archive store.php, and we can quickly look at that. Now notice that on the first line of every file processing page, I require autoload file. This is the file that helps in the connection to the AWS functionalities. I have my helper file, which contains functions that I wrote to help me process data inputs. Though I created an S3 client object. First thing I did was to create an IAM user, and then saved the access credential, created the credential file in a .aws directory. So if we go there, we have the config and the credentials files here. The most important file on this system, where all the fun stuff happens, is the file that processes the data entry form. Now if we go to the start page, we will see that this page holds the form, and it is processed by the register.php file. This chunk of code here processes the data entered on the interface. It checks the database table if that ID number entered already exists to prevent duplicate record. If it doesn't exist, it inserts the record into the system. If it exists, it gives a message saying the identification number already exists. Once this is saved into the database, this chunk of code now requires the Python script that connects to the IoT core. Now in PHP, to run a Python code, you use the shell execute function, or the shell execute command. This chunk of code is the part of the code that publishes to the SNS topic result if the result is positive. This is the message is sent. This is the code that publishes to the site topic. Now let's go to the tracker file to see what it does. Now this is the Python script that publishes the data to the IoT core. Now it has the topic. These are the certificates from the IoT when I created the thing. Now this is the part that pulls the data from the database. So now what I did here was to create a file, and in that file I had a readdbconfig function. This function connects to the database, and then it pulls information entered from the interface here. It selects the name, the identification, the site, and the result of the screening, and then it publishes this. Let's look at the files required. Now you are going to import all of this, which means that it should be, those modules should have been installed on your server. But this Python MySQL dbconfig file is a file that I wrote on the system, and we can see the file here. What I did is that on this project I have two database connection scripts, one for PHP and one for Python. Now we can see that what this does is it holds a function readdbconfig that reads this file config.ini, and this holds the configuration for connection to the database. So let's see that config.ini file. So this just holds the name of the database, the user, and the password of the user. In summary, what the system does is that it embeds Amazon Web Service technologies in the software to simplify the functionalities for non-programmatic users, and it improves the functionality of the system. The big picture is that for infectious diseases, failure on the part of the healthcare worker makes the disease difficult to monitor and to or makes it difficult to reduce the incidence of a disease. So having a system that tracks just simply means that once a result is entered and is positive and an action is needed, the subscribers to the topic will get an email notification that says exactly what should happen. Now this message is saying a client screened on this date at the name of the clinic tested positive to HIV screening to track clients for care registration. In reality, this is not going to be exposed to the world. It's going to be a functionality that will be private, or that will exist on an administration dashboard or console for the authorized administrator to perform these functions of subscribing to topic, and the people who are going to be subscribed to the topic are going to be the healthcare worker who are authorized or who are in charge of that disease monitoring. So this is all about the system. You can play with the system. I'm going to leave the site available for a while, and on the home page you can read how to use the system and play around with it to see how it works. Thank you and goodbye.